Yo, what's up everyone? My name is Zenitsu, and we are back with another Digimon video. So today, we have some metadata to look at, because Bandai decided to post 3 events worth of data, all covering the last bit of BT22.5/EX10, and then we also do have over on Digimon Meta's website, a Chinese event to look at. The Chinese event on Digimon Meta's website actually is a full top 16 breakdown, where the 3 events that Bandai has provided are only up to top 4, which is slightly disappointing, but something I guess is better than nothing, especially since BT22.5/EX10 is coming to a close. So we get to see not only just where this format ended up, but where this format is going, all in one video. So if you're enjoying this type of content and you want to see more, don't forget to do that YouTube and social media doobly-doo thing and leave that like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you can stay up to date for when I upload or go live next. And feel free to tell me your thoughts about any of these decks or the events down in the comments below. So without further ado, let's actually start getting into the weeds of all of the data that we have. So starting off with the Latin American October regionals, their top 4 is a Magnamon deck, 2 Gallantmons, and a Royal Knights deck. So I'm not really going to be talking about Gallantmon at all, because it's Gallantmon. It's the #1 deck in this current format environment, and by this current I mean BT22.5/EX10. So it's just an incredibly strong deck that we probably have talked to ad nauseum about, because it basically topped every single event in some capacity. So yeah, it's just an incredibly strong deck. As far as the deck we haven't really seen do well in a while, that's going to be Magnamon. And Magnamon's still a powerful deck. It's just the meta has adapted to where we actually have tools to deal with him. So there is space for him in the meta, because once those tools are kind of just removed or reduced, then that allows him to actually have space to squeeze back in. Because what's really stopping Magnamon X Antibody from being as powerful is 1, big blockers, 2, Digimon that produce lingering effects that are really going to be harmful to Magnamon X Antibody. So those are the 2 major factors, because if Magnamon X Antibody isn't able to re-trigger his ability, or his ability isn't necessarily strong enough compared to the DP that the opponent has, then it's not really the most impactful of abilities. It's still strong, don't get me wrong, it's just against specific styles of decks and specific abilities, it's not nearly as strong. So that's why they're still playing the Honkunmon and the Flamedramon to be able to try to have extra ways at being able to not only just trigger his ability by removing the opponent's security proactively, but also stopping the opponent from being able to block in case you can't trigger his ability proactively before he swings. And that's kind of why Janai's House, Island Adventures, and Blinding Ray are also still like required cards for this deck, so that way you have more ways to be able to trigger Magnamon X Antibody's protection. Then when it comes to just some of the other tech that I'm seeing here, it really looks like pretty much the same old we've seen out of the deck in the past. They're just adding in Medieval Gallantmon, because why not? It's just a super easy generic staple card to run in anything that has the deck space for it, and we've seen it a lot this format because it just is a super easy card to use. Then we also have the Death Exmon, which is kind of functioning similarly to Medieval Gallantmon, just covering a little bit of different bases in terms of its cost reduction and the removal ability, because D-Digivolve is incredibly strong, and that's partially why the starter deck Magnamon is an incredibly powerful card. So that's cool to see there. They're still running some level 7 aces on top of Omnimon just to kind of help finish the game or put the opponent in some bad situations if they're trying to get rid of your Magnamon X, or even technically your Medieval Gallantmon, because one of the aces is Jesmon GX Ace. Then when it comes to the other additional tech that I see, they're running the Tie Tamer, which is a interesting choice, because most of the time we've seen like Davis before as their preferred memory setter because of the consistency in terms of what you get just for playing it, but it looks like this player is electing to use the consistency with drawing every time you're going to be attacking at least once per tie. So that way they still have some relatively decent consistency while also having the ability to still have a memory setter. So cool to see Magnamon still be able to do well, and we'll just take a quick look at the Gallantmons, even though I'm not going to be talking about them. It does look like Cool Boy is the preferred way over the Takato, so I think that's just the path that people are going to take. Not saying Takato's that bad, I just think that Cool Boy is better. Then when it comes to the Royal Knights, this just looks like a very standardized Royal Knights deck. I don't see anything crazy or different that's really worth pointing out. But Royal Knights, even with the nerf to Royal Knights of the Purge, is still a strong deck, especially going into BT23, where similarly to Magnamon, actually did get a new card to be able to help boost and bolster the deck. So I think this is going to be arguably better than what Magnamon got, because Magnamon got one card, where this got several Royal Knights and a new Yggdrasil. So this deck is definitely a still powerful deck and one to look out for getting stronger going into BT23. Then the last one is another Gallantmon deck. They're also on Cool Boys, but the really weird thing about this deck is they're just playing 5 different Digimons. I don't exactly know why, but it is a choice. Maybe it's like a flex where they just don't care what Gigis they're playing, and they think that the egg is very not super impactful, so they're just running a slew of different ones just because. So yeah, the deck is still incredibly strong where your eggs just don't matter, maybe is the message that they're trying to send. So that is Latin American's top 4. Then we go on to Europe's top 4. So we have a Myotis loop, a Beelzemon, and 2 rocks and minerals. So not surprised seeing the rocks and minerals. It already was the best thing to come out of EX10. Myotismon did get a lot of boosting in EX10 because that's literally where this loop is coming from, is the fact that you have your tamer to give your Myotismon rush, so you could constantly use the Myotismon and play it out thanks to the Arukeni and Mummy package, to be able to just kind of set everything up, and then you're just going to loop your Myotismon and play Myotismon after Myotismon, and then attack with Rush, and that's kind of where the Omnimon comes in, is to kind of actually just close games, because for whatever reason, this new Myotismon is a red and blue Digimon, as well as being purple. So yeah, it's just trying to use the Arukeni and Mummy stuff to get into multiple Myotismons. So they are kind of toolboxing their Myotismons a little bit by running the Memory Gain Myotismon, and they're running the old BT16 Myotismon. I think this one deletes a tamer. I'm not a huge expert on this deck. I don't exactly know what all of the cards do. I just know that they're trying to basically loop the Arukenis and Mummies with the tamer to be able to get into your Myotismons pretty easily. And it looks like they're just splashing in a Venom Myotismon just for the because, as well as a Nidhoggmon, because the deck does have some decent discard, so this could help with the extra memory gain. And the interesting new tech that this deck is running is Digital Gate Open, because this deck doesn't have that much ways to be able to set up and reset up its tamers, especially if they're in your hand, because I know off of the Arukeni and Mummy stuff and the Myotis stuff, you'd rather just play your tamers out of your trash, because you're going to be deleting your tamers to play out your Digimon. So Digital Gate Open is just an additional card to help play an additional tamer when you need to help combo off. Then when it comes to Beelzemon was able to do something. He did also get some meaningful updates in EX10. So again, I'm not trying to like say EX10 was that bad. It's just in comparison, Rocks and Minerals is just far above everything else that came out in EX10. But the fact that EX10 is actually allowing certain decks that weren't necessarily doing well to find some success is pretty nice, because we haven't seen Beelzemon in a while. It really doesn't look like it changed that much. All we can really tell is they have a new rookie, which adds a new mill trigger, which could help delete low-level Digimon and mill a little bit quicker. Then you also have a new Ballmon, which is another card that's basically just a threat, where it's like, you should not delete this card, otherwise I'm going to play out a Beelzemon. And then we also have Beelzemon Ace, which is another Beelzemon that can de-Digivolve, and de-Digivolve is incredibly strong. So yeah, it's just a good slew of cards that they got to help bolster the deck a little bit, and the deck still kind of is just wanting to use X antibody to be able to just rip through the opponent's security without any care in the world, for you basically doing your deck's job on milling as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And yeah, the deck really isn't doing anything different in terms of its overall game plan. It's just stronger enacting its game plan. Then when it comes to Rocks and Minerals, I'm not really going to be touching on this deck at all, pretty much because, you know, It's rocks and minerals. It doesn't really have that many deviations in terms of tech that it's going to include. So this first one is a more traditional magnetic Dramon OTK variant, and that's exactly what the second variant is doing. It's just this version is leveraging the fact that you have metallic Dramon as a potential floodgate. You have the Gatsumon to set up the magnetic in the trash for metallic to potentially play it out for free, or you could just digivolve on top of metallic because it's a floodgate and it's stalled out the opponent the turn, and usually because you're an OTK deck, sometimes that one turn can make or break if you are able to win the game or not. And then this deck is also leveraging Digital Gate Open as another way to kind of just set up your extra closes and have even more resilience against various different forms of Tamer removal, because we have Unique Emblem to play closes from the trash and we have Digital Gate Open to play closes from the hand. I mean, technically Gravel from the Hearts can play closes from the hand as well, so it just has extra Tamer resilience on enacting its game plan, because there are certain decks like Machine Dramon in the format that do have really good Tamer hate, so making sure that your Tamers are going to be active is going to be very key and crucial to this type of a deck's overall success. Then going into the last Bandai provided data set, we have the Oceania regionals. So this is, well, the top 4 decks for that event, and 2 of them are almost exactly the same, being kind of Growl Loop decks. It's traditionally using Megidramon, but you could use a whole bunch of different top ends. It really doesn't matter. It's the exact same deck no matter which way you kind of play it and no matter what kind of top end you use. I'll get into that in just a moment. Then you have Purple Hybrids and Omnimon. Again, decks we've all seen ad nauseum at this point, because these are just some of the best decks in the current format. So going over kind of just the reverse order, because the Omnimon deck is actually a CS Omnimon, and they're utilizing the Detective Agency to find some of its CS cards. The interesting thing to note here is they are doubling down on the Alter S combo, which I feel like is correct from my own personal play preferences, because, you know, you just want to loop this card as many times as you can and then end in the other Omnimon. So it's nice to know that they're kind of just doing that. They're utilizing the black base with the CS cards. It's interesting that they're not running Ace, but I think they just don't need the Ace, because the Ace is obviously the worst of the 3 Omnimons. It's good for, like, a psychological factor, but, like, it's just okay as a card when it comes to an Omnimon to actually use. So cool to see Omnimon is doing well. Purple Hybrids is literally just Purple Hybrids. I really don't know what else to say. It's kind of just adopting the ever so toxic Gallant package that a lot of decks are using, where if you just have a 13k DP Digimon, then you could use promo to delete it, trigger all of your on delete abilities, and basically get a free rush body out of nowhere. And you have the Vulgarmon and the Arrestadramon Superior Mode as 2 Digimon that can hit that DP threshold, as well as the Gallantmon from BT23. So that's kind of where they're at, and because this deck is actively trying to mill both players' decks, Gallantmon from BT13 is a incredibly powerful card, because your Digimon will delete itself, leave an open space for Gallantmon to come in. You could use Gallantmon, swing, delete it to the other Gallantmon, and then, yeah, it's just absolutely rush aggressive nonsense. Then when it comes to aggressive nonsense, that's kind of where the Growl Loop is. It is proven to be hyper problematic, so they really did need to hit this card. I mean, sure, hitting this card was fine, but obviously Growlmon X Antibody is proving to be a very powerful card in the current environment. And by current, I mean the EX10 and BT22 environment. So as far as what this deck is doing, it's basically just Megidramon stuff, except instead of Megidramon, they're using Leviamon. So yeah, it just makes total sense there, and instead of the War Growls, they're just using Cerberusmon. So it's basically the same deck, and that's what the other topping Growl Loop deck is doing, is literally the exact same thing. Yeah, that is all of the events from BT22.5/EX10. And before we get into the BT23 data from China, I actually have been keeping track, and if anyone's been watching my videos, I like to show this little live document. It's really not anything too substantial when it comes to like data analysis and calculating. Usually I do a better job in like Excel or whatnot, but I figured this is just simple enough for people to look at. This is where the format currently is. So if you want to take this as a tier list, go ahead. You basically have your format forerunners, which is Gallantmon, X-Antibody, Machinedramon, Rocks and Minerals, Megidramon or Growloop decks, Omnimon, Genkumon, Galaxy, and Purple Hybrids as the best stuff and the stuff that's topping the most compared to everything else in the entire game. So this is probably like the tier 1-ish category, and you could actually start to see that there is a divide between tier 1 and tier 2. This probably divider doesn't need to exist, but if you want, you could consider basically these 3 decks or like these 7 decks as tier 2, where they're reasonably playable and they've topped a decent amount. That's literally more than just topping once. So that includes both Imperial Dramon decks, Leviamon, 7 Great Demon Lords, Phoenix, Lord Knight, which is basically kind of just lumped in with Levia because they're doing almost the exact same thing. And then you have Royal Knights. So those are basically like your tier 2 decks, if you want to consider that. And then your rogue tier, or the decks that literally just got lucky, are Sakuyamon, Cross Hearts Adventures, Galacti, Bloomlord, Bagra, Heroes, Armors, Myotis, and Beelzemon. So that's currently everything that has done well in this environment that has been documented and recorded. So now that EX10 and BT22.5 are out of the way, we could actually get into some BT23 data. So we do have from China a top 16 event. It looks like from the event details, it was Bandai 256. So it was a pretty sizable event. And when it comes to the top 16 archetype breakdown, we have a Gallantmon deck as the first place deck, followed by Royal Knights. Then we have 3 Hudie decks in a row. 7 Great Demon Lords, another Gallantmon deck, another Myotis loop deck, Virus Imperial, Purple Hybrids, another Royal Knights deck, Jesmon, and another Hoodiemon deck. So I think that's 4 Hudie decks, 2 Gallantmon decks, 2 Royal Knight decks, 1 Jesmon, 1 7 Great Demon Lord, and 1 Myotismon, plus 1 Imperial and 1 Purple Hybrid. So a pretty okay spread, but yeah, it's still a lot of decks that have been topping before are still topping, with Hudie being the only new thing outside of Jesmon. So let's actually look at some of these decks. I'm not going to go too deep into the weeds as far as some of them, but it is worth noting some of the changes that they are choosing to adopt. So it looks like the Gallantmon is indeed playing their brand new Gallantmon. This is utilizing the Takato variant, which we know is arguably the weaker of the tamers that they could be running. So yeah, it's interesting to note that basically the only meaningful change is they do have the new Gallantmon that acts as a really good floodgate while also potentially deleting the opponent's Digimon. So good on Gallantmon actually having anti-purple tools. I mean, it always kind of was anti-purple because it tries to take advantage of the opponent having a large trash. It's just this literally prevents the opponent from playing cards out of their trash, which is incredibly strong when, as you could see, the majority of the format is playing cards by effects and playing cards out of your trash. Then when it comes to Royal Knights is still Royal Knights. They're actually using some interesting tamers as like alternative play lines. So they have Keenan, again, to try to maybe hose on the opponent being able to play out Digimon by effects, which is, again, pretty huge. So it's a good anti-tempo tool, as well as Kari for them checking your security, and Mimi. So this almost feels like security control if it was Royal Knights, because they're really slim on the actual Royal Knights that they're playing, which is weird. I don't know if these decks are accurate, but yeah, it's good to know that basically Royal Knights is now just trying to be security control, which is not necessarily the most fun or interesting way to approach playing the game. So that's Royal Knights, at least the first one. We'll see if the other Royal Knights is doing anything different. And this one is a more traditional style Royal Knights deck instead of like hardcore tamer anti-tempo security control nonsense. So this is the more traditional approach to how you could play Royal Knights, and it looks like the biggest inclusions is the fact that they are using the new Magnamon, they're using the Gallantmon, they're using the Yggdrasil, they're using the Dynasmon, they're using the Examon. So there's a lot of changes that actually went into Royal Knights, and we knew that mostly because of just Royal Knights getting support, it would be a very powerful deck, and lo and behold, it still is. Then taking a look at the other Gallantmon deck, I think it's literally just going to be something very similar to what we saw the other one doing. This one's actually adopting a Garuru-Myotis tech, just maybe for a free rush because they are on the X antibody cards, and then they do actually have the LM memory boost because, you know, everything's already part red or part purple, so it just makes sense. And then they're still teching in a Takato, while still utilizing Cool Boy at the same time. So they're kind of trying to take a little bit of a hybrid approach in terms of their tamer setup. But yeah, it's still Gallantmon at the end of the day. I don't really know what else to say. Going over the Hudie decks, because we have a lot of Hudie decks to go over. We have 4 of them. I'm pretty sure the majority of these are probably going to be very similar with some minor differences. So the first Hudie deck that we have is utilizing Terriermon, Palmon, and Betamon, as well as Gatsumon. The second one is Terriermon, Betamon, Tentomon, Gatsumon. The next one is Terriermon, Palmon, Hugo, and Gatsu. So it looks like Terriermon's pretty consistent in pretty much all of them. Looks like Palmon's kind of optional. It depends on how you're actually approaching Hudie. If you're trying to go more Hudie loop or if you're trying to do something else, I think Hudie loop is probably just the way most of these decks are probably going to approach playing, which is just cycle your Tamer, cycle your Hudie, cycle a level 4 Digimon, and then just keep DNAing over and over again to get free extra rush attacks. So it looks like the big constants are Seadramon and Angemon when it comes to the level 4s. Those are 2 constants. And then the supporting extra level 4s don't really seem to matter as much. And then obviously Hudie is the name of the deck, so obviously she's going to be in there. So it looks like a lot of these decks are just Hudie loops. So we have a Hudie loop deck that is actually using the Ryuji to use the options pretty effectively, which is cute to think about. If you're OTKing, I reasonably don't think you need to do that because the only thing you really need is just to set up the Chitose, and that's kind of it. You just use Hudie and combo off from there. If anyone's unfamiliar with that loop, basically you're just using the Terriermon or Palmon's ability to essentially de-digivolve yourself, and then you're going to re-digivolve yourself into a higher stage. So you're going to be using Hoodiemon to set up a Tamer, you're going to use the Tamer to set up a Digimon, you're going to attack with Alliance, DNA with the extra Tamer, and then you're going to de-digivolve, then re-digivolve, and then you're able to basically just loop going into new DNAs over and over again. So that's kind of the idea of the deck. So this is definitely interesting utilizing the option spread. I think the option spread's not bad just because the opponent might not be expecting it and a lot of protections are weak against options. So using some of the best options in terms of removal is pretty decent. And you have the space for it because you're just wholeheartedly focused on going up into your level 4 Digimon and then looping your level 5 DNAs. So it looks like they're using the Pyildramon for some additional attacks. And you should have some pretty decent protection because of the barrier here. So it's not like your Digimon is actually in that great of a threat of dying. Plus, Pyildramon also is a really good floodgate in of himself, stopping the opponent from actually being able to make multiple checks in a single turn. So it's really good against a lot of decks that want to attack a lot. Then you have the second Hudie deck, which is actually trying to digivolve up into level 6s. So they're using Venusmon as a potential floodgate. They're not so much hardcore into looping their DNAs. So that's interesting to think about. So they're just more traditional Hudie, I guess is the best way I could call it. And then they also have Jesmon Blitzarm as another good level 6 Digimon to go into for some protection and option removal. So that's pretty nice. Then the other deck is, again, another Hoodie loop deck, just hardcore doubling down on the level 5s and your level 5 DNAs, and they're just running some extra consistency tools to be able to make sure that they could actually loop. So I think this is probably my preferred approach when it comes to how I would build it, even though the option variant is kind of cute. It's just I would rather just focus on doubling down on my own efforts. Then the last deck is, again, more DNA focused with just a casual Leopardmon Ace, because this is also CS, so it could go on top of it, and this is green, so it could go on top of it, and this could help play out level 4 bodies, so that's pretty cute there. The Jimmy Ken is a pretty interesting tech, but outside of that, it's still pretty much just let me do DNA loop nonsense and be hyper aggressive. So makes sense that Hoodie is good being basically similarly to Magnetic Dramon, a hyper consistent OTK loop combo deck. So yeah, that is Hoodie in a nutshell and why it's been doing well. Then we have 7 Great Demon Lords. I don't think they got anything in this set, so I don't think this deck has changed that much. You do have Moon Millenniumon as an interesting tech card. They're splashing in Belphemon X Antibody because it has Rush, so that's cute as well. Outside of that, it's kind of just what we've seen and expect out of 7 Great Demon Lords for the most part. They're also running the new Rage mode, which is something that they adopted in the last format because this could incidentally hose on Tamers on accident if the opponent is not paying attention. Then when it comes to the Myotis deck, they labeled it Garuru-Myotis, and it is kind of interesting using a Garurumon and Ghost engine to facilitate your Myotismons deleting themselves to like do your whole setup and play out your Myotismons. So that's interesting. Yeah, it just shows that there's multiple flexibility in what you could do when you're trying to take advantage of specific abilities. So it's cute that they're using the Drakmon as a way to attack and then Digivolve into a Myotismon because he is an undead. So there is some cute little synergies there. Ghosts are not undead, which is, I think, funny, but it doesn't really matter. You're just using these for probably just some cycling, it looks like, because these don't even have the gain of memory. So they're just trying to be as consistent as they possibly can be. So that way they can get up into a Myotismon and a Malomyotismon. So interesting to see that approach, that it's not a loop deck, but it is still a Myotis deck. And then when it comes to the last 3 decks, we do have a Purple Hybrids deck, which is Purple Hybrids. Literally almost nothing new outside of the usage of a couple of options. Then when it comes to Imperial Virus, I'm pretty sure this literally got nothing new. Zenith is an interesting choice. Again, sometimes this website has inaccurate decks, so I'll just put that disclaimer again here. But Zenith being an interesting tech card for this build is something, I guess. Then the last deck that we're going to be talking about is going to be Jesmon. So Jesmon has been making some waves in terms of what it's able to do just because of the combination of the brand new Jesmon and the Savior Huckmon that has Alliance, on top of the Sistermons that actually interact with Alliance. Because these cards want to suspend, and then this will let you Digivolve into a Jesmon, and then this will let you play either more Sistermons or the token out. This iteration is actually leveraging the Genkumon package, so that way you could build like an oppressive board state really quickly, and then hard slam a Genkumon with the Genkumon X Antibody in your trash, and kind of just continue the protection while you're building an oppressive board state as quickly as you possibly can. And it doesn't necessarily matter how much memory you give the opponent. If they're just functionally unable to respond because of how fast this deck can move, then it just doesn't matter. And then they're just topping it off with a GX Ace and Omnimon X Antibody, which I think most Jesmon decks probably are using Omnimon X Antibody as the game finisher anyway. But yeah, so that's kind of this deck. It's interesting that they're not playing the Sistermon option, but I guess if they're just like running the Genkumon stuff, then they don't have the deck space for it. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting approach. I think they're more just focused on utilizing your Huckmons to gain you a lot of decent value, maybe casually Digivolve into a Bow Huck, or just hard slam the good Savior and then just combo off from there. So different play lines on how you could approach actually playing the deck, which is pretty decent. So Jesmon definitely is a force to be reckoned with. We've already seen it do a little bit of success over in Japan, and we've seen a little bit of success over in North America as well, in terms of Jesmon actually being something viable that came out of BT23 that isn't literally named Hoodie Loop. So good on that. And for the most part, that's kind of all of the metadata that we currently have. I'll probably keep track of this as well in terms of like how I was keeping track before. Maybe I'll go back to doing the Google spreadsheet, but data hasn't necessarily been the most accurate in terms of what Bandai's been getting us and how just data collection is in general for Digimon. So maybe that's not necessarily the best approach, but we'll see. So that's all I really have for this video. This is just high competitive Digimon. I think that we need more data to see where BT23 is going, to see like what actually is hyper problematic. It still looks like a lot of the strong top decks from the previous format are going to continue to be strong, with Hoodiemon and Jesmon and Royal Knights getting better. Well, I mean, Jesmon getting better, Royal Knights getting better, and Hoodie being the new hotness out of BT23 that actually is proving to be successful compared to the threat of like Myotis Loop, which we all thought was going to be strong, but had a lot of speed and consistency issues to actually get there. The combo itself is strong, but not the setup. And Hoodie Loop definitely has a lot less setups, and it definitely feels more in line with Magnetic Dramon in terms of its OTK potential on how fast and aggressive it could move and how easy it is to set up. So that's definitely something to keep a lookout for, as well as, you know, just some of the other top 4 running decks. So I hope you found this video to be helpful and informative. Sorry if it was a little bit on the long side. There was just a decent amount of data to look at and a decent amount to talk about. So with that, I hope to see you all in the next video. Later.